And we are live. Whenever it lags, I get oddly nervous. I'm like very scared that I clicked the wrong button or something when Steph is away and I'm responsible for her.
Just breaking the broadcast.
Yeah, just breaking it all. So I'm here with Maddie and Rick today, and we're going to talk about right-sizing. Rick, I hear you are going on a super fun road trip. We were chatting about it in the pre-room. Anything else? Anything big on the docket for you?
Yeah, so we're going to Missouri. I've got some family in Branson. So we're going to road trip from Seattle all the way down to Missouri for a week or so. And then I'm combining a little bit of a work trip because we have a really cool event in New York on the 25th where we're doing an optimization presentation with Aptio and Spot and the Cube. So if you're in the New York area on the 25th in the afternoon, sign up. We can post a link in the chat. But that's going to be fun to kind of combine a road trip with work a little bit. And I don't know, I've never done the road trip across the middle of the country. We're going to stop at Waldrug and see, like I've heard from so many people, you have to stop at Waldrug. I'm not sure what's terribly special about a really large drugstore, but I got to go get it done. So
get the shirt, get the bumper sticker, check it off, man.
Right.
Lots of magic in the Midwest.
Check it off the list, I suppose. No, but I'm looking forward to it. We've got some stops that we camp, some stops that we are in hotels and stuff. So it's going to be a varied experience for us.
Awesome. Maddie, anything exciting on the docket for you this weekend, or I guess in July?
Nothing in particular. We just got some patio furniture finally after like 3 years. So it's nice to kind of sit out there and drink our coffee. Just kind of like enjoying the weather. We've been getting a lot of rain here in Colorado. So few nice days ahead of us, which is good.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are here today to chat about right-sizing. I know both of you have been on the show before, so should be familiar faces, familiar names. But can you both give us a quick 1-minute origin story? And Rick, I'm going to ask you to go first.
Sure. Okay, let's condense this thing down. Okay, I've been at Amazon a little over a year now. So I run all of the product management teams for the optimization tools. That includes Compute Optimizer, Cost Explorer Rightsizing, Savings Plan, purchase recommendations, and reservation purchase recommendations as well. Previous to that, I led the product management team for Turbonomics cloud optimization capability for 4 years. And then before that, I was at Microsoft running the optimization team. So I think I've been right-sizing now for 9 years in the cloud, which is crazy to think about, that we're still having these same conversations, but we are.
But we got so much better tools now. So that's good. So, learning every day.
I'm happy to still be working on it because I think it's really important for our industry and planet. So I'm happy to be here. So.
Awesome. Maddie, over to you.
Yeah, cool. So hi, everybody. Maddie Serapio, based here in Colorado. Today's my 3 years actually at AWS. It's flown by, so pretty cool. I work on the same team as Savannah. We're helping customers with their cloud financial management journey there. Prior to that, I worked in the business intelligence background, building dashboards, managing a data team. And then I also worked at another organization where I was doing FinOps there.
Awesome. So we got a lot of expertise under our belts. So I know I've already talked a little bit about all the great tools. Rick, your team has been launching constantly this year. I swear every time I go on LinkedIn, it's another Rick post being like, we launched this crazy new feature that is just completely game-changing for everything that we do. Can you talk a little bit about what you're excited about this year and kind of the big game changers and how people can use Compute Optimizer and identify some of those right-sizing opportunities?
Yeah. First off, I just got a shout out to my team. We have an incredible team for Compute Optimizer and for Savings Plan and RI recommendations. And the team's velocity and speed of launching has just been really high. And we've been able to really focus in on, hey, what are the things we can deliver quickly that add value to customers' environments to really unblock them from achieving real value in the optimization space. That's been a wild ride this year. We've accelerated. And so some of the launches we've done just in the past few months, one of my most favorites is tag filtering. So in the Compute Optimizer console and in export data, you have all your tag data. So tags, tag key value pairs, and you can now do filtering where you can have multiple key value pairs. So you can do something like tag equals, production, and tag equals environment, or, business unit finance, or whatever. And so you can kind of multidimensionally sort through your optimization recommendations by some sort of metadata that you and your organization has. So tag filtering is huge. We really want to provide the capability in the UI where people don't have to export and build their own UI or dashboard to really work with the recommendations, right? Just to lower the load and the effort of using the product and getting value out of the right size recommendations. We also expanded support for third-party APM solutions to additional 5 regions. That's awesome because if you're not using CloudWatch to gather memory metrics, which we'll discuss a little bit more later, but if you do have a third party, we want you to be able to grab those memory metrics and put them into Compute Optimizer. The impact is huge. So just providing that availability at all of the regions is important to us. We also launched some pretty cool new AI features where we are using AI and ML to detect if you're running SQL on your workloads. We infer it with AI. And we have this new data set called inferred workload. And with our AI and ML training, we detect with extremely high confidence if you're running SQL without even getting on the instance. And now you can filter on it. So now you can say, hey, I want to see all of my right size recommendations for SQL. And now, because SQL is kind of expensive, now you can run a program just to optimize your SQL instances and save money just on very expensive SQL. So that's another really great feature. You can filter on all of the different inferences types. And there's quite a few of them, not just SQL. But adding SQL was big because that is a big focus area for a lot of companies, is to optimize their database footprint.
Yeah.
We also we launched support for storage optimization on HDD. Now, what that means is SC1, ST1, block, all of like the spinning disk metal storage types we now support optimization for. So sizing between them, sizing them down, all of those sorts of optimization recommendations. In addition to that, we also now support IO2 Block Express. And that is huge because for companies that use a lot of IO2 Block Express, it can be very expensive per unit, but it's really difficult to pick the exact right amount of provisioned IOPS for each one of those volumes. And so having something that's analytically looking at your historical utilization and picking it for you and telling you where to be at is really helpful. Kind of gives you this safety net that, okay, I'm sized correctly. I'm not like over provisioned on IOPS. These are very expensive. It's expensive to get it wrong. It's expensive to get it oversized or undersized from a performance perspective. Another really cool feature is we launched non-consecutive utilization data. Now, this is kind of a confusing title. What it means is you can turn your workloads on and off. And Compute Optimizer will now stitch all of the historical online running time. So imagine like a graph, and every time you reboot the server, turn it off, data's missing. Now we take all of the data from when the instance is running, stitch it all together in one pile of historical data, and then give you the right size recommendation on that. So every time you reboot or have a delay, we still use the full historical 14 days of default data to generate that recommendation.
Awesome.
That's very nice because like we found that a lot of companies are doing suspension also care about right sizing. There's kind of a correlation there, right? So that launch is just improving the accuracy of the recommendations pretty substantially, especially when there's like interruptions in the historical data.
So many new things to slice and dice by, so many new ways to look at your work. It's great. It's great. I'm really excited to see even like how much this tool has grown in the last year.
And another one, we had 61 new instance types supported. That's just keeping up with all of the launches. Like the number of new instance families continues to grow, and that's awesome. And it's important for us to keep on them because every new instance family that comes out has a potential to introduce a new processor that is faster and cheaper. And whenever you run into a situation where you're on an older instance, like an M5, and you have a chance to go to a 7th gen something or other, you have this opportunity to move to a CPU that's 30-40% faster, which not only is better performance for your application, and you have far less latency and lag and load time, you can actually reduce the CPU count and still improve performance. So having and supporting those new instance families really unlocks and kind of demonstrates what's possible with moving to new instance families. That's part of rightsizing. People think that sometimes modernization is an initiative, and then they think of rightsizing as a different initiative. No, it's the same. It's the same. Rightsizing is the activity of changing the instance type and size of all of your instances. That's graviton. That's generational. That's for performance. That's for cost. It's all of it, right?
Yeah.
So
using the right thing for the right job in general.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a lot of announcements, Rick. How do people keep up with do they just follow you on LinkedIn? Do they go to the announcements page? What's the best way to keep up with everything that your team's doing?
That's a great question. Yeah. So I really like AWS's RSS feed, the AWS What's New RSS feed. That's one of my favorites. It can be overwhelming though, because there's new launches like daily from the company, which is cool, but a little overwhelming. So yeah, you can definitely follow on social media. We post all of those sorts of things on LinkedIn and various other locations. So there's also the AWS like CFM blog. That's one of my favorites. That blog we generally for the larger and the news bot. Yeah, that's great. The AWS cost news.
All of us tossing it in the chat at the same
Yeah,
time.
that's great. So the CFM blog is great because we take some time to write out kind of how we think about a new launch and how it impacts folks, and then usually get like a customer to try the feature out and talk about it a little bit to make sure it's like really meeting customers' needs. So those CFM blog posts are really valuable.
Oh, we got somebody in the chat who says AWS podcasts as well. Yeah, lots of different ways. Awesome. All right. So obviously you guys are improving Compute Optimizer seemingly every day, definitely every week with all of these launches. But just to back up a bit, can you tell us a little bit more about what the base product is? And Maddie, I'd love to hear if you've got some examples of how you've seen customers use it in practice as well.
Yeah. Okay. So Compute Optimizer is designed to analyze all of the historical data, usage data of all your instances, your EC2 instances. And with all that data, and then it pivots and takes a look at what are all the instance types available for you in the region that you're in. And if we were to move your current instance to a new one, what would be the absolute best performance fit at the lowest possible cost? And I say them in that order is very important, because performance, like if you just wanted to save money, you just move everything to a T4, right? And boom, you've saved 80% of your EC2 bill. Great, congratulations. But everything falls over, right? Like you can't do that. So the first goal is to move everything to the most performant instance type for the workload. The second point is at the lowest possible cost. So it's providing recommendations on which instance type and size to select for each of your currently existing instances based on their data. So that's what the product does. But we talk to customers all the time that work with it, look at the recommendations. And so I want to hand it over to Maddie, because Maddie works with a lot of customers to help them implement a program and really get off the ground with how to do a rightsizing sort of initiative.
Yeah. So good question. So and good point. So for customers, what I've seen for their types of programs is taking a look at one environment. So I think that's where that tag filtering comes in. Like you mentioned, Rick, being able to filter down to dev, QA, sandbox environments and see where they're oversized. So for example, even just in a sandbox environment, seeing folks that have over provisioned their instance there, and then where they can actually right size those. Another case where I've seen folks use Compute Optimizer pretty effectively, like you mentioned, right sizing is not just the t-shirt sizes, but the generations too. So going from, say, like an older generation instance to the latest generation and seeing maybe a performance gain there, and then maybe later down the road being able to scale that t-shirt size. And then I think the cool thing that I've seen with Compute Optimizer is just not EC2, right? It has all the other services there. So being able to guide my customers on, say, the volumes, I think is really cool, being able to say GP2 to GP3 modernization, what is the risk there? And it's low risk, right? So being able to say that and give the customers comfort, knowing that it's going to be a low effort change as well as a low risk change.
Yeah, that's a great point, Maddie, because like the company, sorry, Outlook notification. So companies often are like, where do I get started? What recommendation types are the easiest for me to execute? Or, what's the low hanging fruit I can kind of dip my toe in the water on right sizing? And I love pivoting to EBS and storage optimization, volume optimization, because there's no downtime. And so a lot of companies are still using like 5.9s and ITIL and a lot of change control process, right? And that's okay. Like there's a lot of benefits to that, but sometimes it can kind of slow down a right sizing program. But on EBS, since there's no downtime, a lot of companies don't require a change control process. And I've had experiences with certain companies where they'll just go take all of the GP2 to GP3 recommendations overnight and nobody knows. Like it's just like, there's no downtime, there's no impact because performance increases and improves post move. So all you're doing is just cutting the cost because the price for GP3 is 20% cheaper per gig than GP2. So you just have like this immediate 20% reduction on all of your general purpose storage costs. So that's such a great way to sort of try to execute some right size recommendations, and then you see the results almost immediately. You can see if you're tracking like the daily bill views, you can see your storage cost chunk down 20% kind of overnight, which is really a great way to sort of get people to maybe people that are like, oh, let's not bother, it's too much risk or effort or whatever, to sort of show them the proof and kind of show them the flywheel effect of optimize a little bit, see the outcome, get excited, see the impact, and then start getting a little warmer.
Yeah, I will say I've definitely seen that a few times where as soon as you do the low effort, the no downtime, start easy, and you can really show that result and that cost reduction to executives, to your technical stakeholders when they see it in their bill, they suddenly become a lot more jazzed about investing time and effort into right sizing or modernizing the rest. It suddenly becomes a priority. And that is so huge because getting the buy-in is half the battle.
Yeah, it is. And it's buy-in is the hardest part of this entire problem. And it's interesting too, because we've been working for years and years and years on improving the math, the algorithms, the sensitivity of recommendations, the accuracy, all of these things. But every time I meet with a customer and we answer the technical reasons of how to right size correctly, it always comes down to a cultural conversation. And it really is like, do you have an appetite? Are you ready to get more comfortable with downtime? Have you embraced cloud elasticity to the point where you're okay using maintenance windows, or you've re-architected in a fashion that you can make changes on instances without application downtime? And so much of the IT industry historically is 5.9s and uptime that we are change averse. This industry is change averse. If something's not broken, don't touch it. Right. And so there's this anti-change mentality that has sort of pervaded the industry because that was the best practice. It used to be that if you rebooted a server in a data center that had been online for 6 years straight, that the motherboard capacitors might pop. And so don't do it. Like, don't touch anything. We don't want the power supply to fail. And that's just not the case anymore. And we have to like really change the hearts and minds of the industry that, yes, we want to right size. We want to gain the benefits of elasticity. This is kind of the whole idea of cloud, is that now you have this flexibility and elasticity. So if you're not getting flexible and elastic use out of your cloud environment, you're missing a lot of value. And so, but the problem is like the person that signs the bill and the check and the PO is not the person that owns the app, that is accountable for the performance of the app. And these two different teams or people are in conflict. And so bringing them together with a product like Compute Optimizer is really important. So we have to satisfy the performance angle for the app owner, the engineer that owns the instance in the application, but then also really highlight the benefits of what's the cost benefit of being more elastic, what's the financial benefit, what's the outcome. So it's really important that we combine those two together and really create an ability for cultural change to utilize cloud more effectively.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I want to double click onto one point you made, right? A lot of it is cultural, right? So what I've seen working with different customers is the objection that I don't know if this is going to be safe. So can you kind of key in on like how safe is Compute Optimizer? can folks trust the recommendations there? What do you do to make sure that we're not causing any downtime for customers, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. So by default, Compute Optimizer is incredibly conservative and safe. There's enough opportunity out there to right size safely and save a lot of money without needing to be aggressive on sizing, just to be very frank. You just don't need to, you don't have to really cut close to the bone to save money. So by default, we use 14 days look back. You can also turn on 93 days look back, right? If there's different business units that are super concerned about how much historical data you're looking at, that's a paid feature, although it's very, very low cost. And we are looking at CPU memory disk network at the 99.5 percentile value. What that means, let me describe what that means a little bit. Okay, so we get 5-minute samples from CloudWatch for all of those metrics. And then we throw out a couple of those samples, a couple of the highest ones, because when you reboot an instance, for example, CPU is going to peak to 100% for a few minutes as it boots up. So we don't want to just upsize you every time you reboot an instance, right? Because we detected a new peak. That's like throwing out your laptop every time you reboot it. Like that's not a great idea. So Compute Optimizer throws out a very small number of those peaks to take care of like patches, reboots, transient peaks, things like that. But then is largely sizing to the next set of samples, so just below peak. And so it's very, very conservative and safe. There's not really a whole lot of risk associated with Compute Optimizer recommendations. And then another reason why it's safe, actually, there's like quite a few reasons. We add an additional buffer on top of the right size recommendation, right around 24 to 26%. It changes mathematically depending on the algorithm that we're using, but there's an additional amount of headroom that is put on top of the recommendation, just in case there is some amount of extra utilization that might occur in the future that was not calculated and planned for in the recommendation algorithm. So you still have an extra 25-ish% safe capacity above your previously high point utilization. So it's safe on the utilization measurement, it's safe on the headroom, and another reason it's safe on memory. If you do not have memory data, Compute Optimizer will not recommend downsizing memory capacity. This is huge because if you don't have the time to go install agents and get memory data across your instances, you can still right size and save quite a bit of money. But I would strongly advise you to install CloudWatch and or use a third-party APM and plug it in, which that's a free feature, by the way. So if you already have a third-party APM, all you got to do is go into Compute Optimizer and turn it on. With memory metrics, the savings increases pretty dramatically because the number of instances that Compute Optimizer feels like are potentials to move to increases pretty dramatically because all of the instances with less memory capacity are not options to move to if we don't see that memory data. And so that count of instances to evaluate grows pretty dramatically. Which means there's a lot more downsize and right size opportunities when we have memory data. So we see if that's one of the big ways to sort of convince people and help people get on board with right sizing is you go add memory data, the savings number jumps by several orders of magnitude, and all of a sudden people's eyes pop out of their head and they're like, oh my gosh, we got to go do this, right? So adding memory is a really, really important part of the convincing, the culture change. Like when you show people, hey, you can impact your business this amount of money in just your business unit by right sizing, people are like, whoa, if I go take these recommendations, that's more money than I make. I can go ask for a promotion or whatever, right? And you want people to feel that way. You want people to feel like they now have an opportunity to have much bigger impact in their company and on their cloud bill because they're using cloud more correctly, like with elasticity in mind, right? And right sizing, like you don't have to rewrite your app to do that. You don't have to go to Kubernetes or microservices or whatever. You might have legacy apps that are really old that it didn't make sense to rewrite them, or you didn't have budget at the time, or whatever reason, and you can still gain that elasticity out of EC2 instances. You can still right size. So it's really important that we just continue to think about that. I love that comment.
Yeah, I love this comment in the chat. Yeah, one thing I will say too is, Rick, you just talked a lot about kind of all of the checks that are built into Compute Optimizer to make sure it's safe, and all of that's really present in the documentation as well. I have a lot of customers who've been very shocked by how much opportunity there is, knowing that there is so much safety built in. When you read the number at the top of the screen, it's hefty, right? And that's with all of that conscientiousness and all of those safety checks built in. So
yeah,
it's a lot out there.
And we want people, like, we invest a lot of product and tooling to help companies save money because we want them to have a great experience on AWS, right?
Yeah.
We want them to really use the technology the way it's, possible to be used. So
awesome. So we're coming up to the last 5 minutes. Rapid fire. What are some cool ways you guys have seen customers use Compute Optimizer, and how can they start integrating with it today? Maddie, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think we kind of keyed on it in the beginning, but starting small, right? Don't try to boil the ocean. You can start with the EBS modernization. You can take a look at some of the lower environments, so sandbox environments where you can actually right size, get the comfort level knowing that it is safe, that you're actually making changes that are going to make an impact financially, but then also not going to impact any of the performance that you're going to require for that instance. So I think that's a good place to start. And then getting buy-in from the teams, that's the most important on why you wouldn't want to, say, boil the ocean and start with everything, I think.
Yeah, I feel like if you can make an inroad with one team and then have that team talk to their peers, that's often a really good way to do it. Governance is sometimes kind of the person who's always telling you to do stuff. So if you can get one of the peers to start having that discussion, it can make it a little bit easier for folks. And Rick, over to you.
Yeah, so Maddie had 2 great examples, but I would also say one of the best ways I've seen to manipulate culture, improve culture, is by creating newsletters and taking screenshots of all the savings and sending them out and saying, hey, look, this person, put the picture of the person that approved the author, the right size recommendations, and say, this person saved our company X number of dollars, and then kind of do a little bit of story and really highlight the bravery, right? Because it takes a little bit of guts to do the first set of recommendation, executions, and really just highlighting culturally, this is the behavior we want. We want people to be bold and brave and use cloud the way it was designed. And here's the value, here's the outcome of somebody that did that, and the dollar amount and the story of how it came about. And we can sort of prop up and highlight the cultural values we would like to embrace as we utilize cloud better in the future. And so newsletters, I've also seen optimization days work really well, where you get all of the server owners, instance owners in a room together, and you set like little bells on the tables. And every time somebody executes a recommendation, they ring a bell and get a raffle ticket. And then you can raffle off like a couple of laptops and a game console and save a few $1 million for your company. I've seen that work really effectively at many companies. So those are fun too, because you can raffle off like a lot of monetary things and still save 100x more than the value of those items.
I've never heard of the bell before. That's awesome.
It's Pavlovian, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
Psychology, like ring the bell, save money, right? You just equate that, and then you just put a bell on everybody's desk and just leave it there. And every time they go into work, they see the bell on their desk. They're like, what should I optimize today, right?
It's kind of competitive too, because if you're in a room and everybody's like ding, 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 you're like, oh my gosh, I have to optimize more. I love that. Oh, that's so funny. All right. We gotta put that into some fin hacks coming up. All right. We got 1 minute left. Any last thoughts? Any last words, last key takeaway from you?
I would say pay attention to the launch announcements coming up. We got a lot of additional improvements coming out here really soon, and I'm super excited about them. And if you find areas that you need help with on getting Compute Optimizer to work, like, reach out. We want to hear about reasons why it's difficult or things like that. And we are actively working on improving this entire experience so everybody has a better time using AWS resources.
Awesome. Maddie?
No, yeah, I think get your feet wet, right? Jump into it. Like Rick mentioned, it takes a little bit of bravery, but once you get the first few, I think you'll get more comfort level on right sizing and saving some money using cloud like it's supposed to be used.
Awesome. All right. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Thank you both for being here. And we will drop all the links in the show notes.
Thanks, Savannah.
Thanks, everybody.